Welcome to Chapter 10, The Fertility Crisis. Thalia examines data spanning 5,000 years. Enhanced fertility is declining. Baseline fertility is adequate. Hybrid fertility. Unknown territory. The King list proves it mathematically, 8 generations until enhancement fades completely through natural integration, 187 years down to 61. Biology is slowly eliminating the hierarchy that politics struggles to constrain. 400 years until integration completes. Can a partnership survive that long? This is the story of how temporary advantages create permanent challenges. And how biology's timeline doesn't wait for politics to catch up. Let's begin. Chapter 10, The Fertility Crisis. 2832 BCE, 2 years after the massacre, 1 year after infrastructure crisis. Thalia's medical facility, Uruk, late evening. The volunteers' cellular structures were rejecting the modification. Thalia watched biomarkers cascade through failure patterns she'd seen 46 times before, each iteration teaching her what baseline human biology refused to accept. Experiment 47. 47 attempts to extend baseline lifespan beyond the 60-year ceiling that evolution had optimized for shorter reproductive cycles, faster generational turnover, and adaptation through population replacement rather than individual persistence. 47 failures. The baseline woman on the examination platform, Zara, 52 years old, mother of 4, grandmother of 9, lay still. At the same time, crystalline sensors read her body's rejection of immortal intervention at quantum scales. For 3 hours, the cellular modifications had appeared to work. Telomere extension is proceeding normally. DNA repair mechanisms are active. Metabolic efficiency is improving. All the markers that made enhanced humans live 200 years instead of 60. Then cascade failure. Every modified system is reverting. Every improvement undone. Baseline biology prioritizes mortality over longevity, refusing enhancements that would disrupt processes evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to function within specific parameters. Zara's body was designed to die. And Thalia couldn't change that design without destroying what made the body function. "I'm sorry," Thalia said, her voice carrying 55,000 years of medical expertise confronting a problem that expertise couldn't solve. "The modifications aren't stable. Your biology is rejecting the enhancement." Zara opened her eyes, brown eyes showing fine lines at the corners that enhanced how humans her age wouldn't develop for another 70 years. "So I'll still die at 60? Like my mother? Like my grandmother?" "Your biology is optimized for shorter lifespans," Thalia explained, clinical precision masking guilt that sat like stone in her chest. "Enhanced humans have genetic configurations that support extended longevity. Baseline biology doesn't have those configurations. Attempting to add them." She gestured at the biomarker displays showing a rejection cascade. "Your body treats modifications as foreign. Attacks them. Returns to baseline function. Because I'm not enhanced. Not an accusation. Just recognition of a permanent biological category. Because enhancement restructured human genetics at fundamental levels," Thalia corrected. "Enhanced humans aren't just modified baseline humans. They're biologically distinct in ways that make their systems incompatible with baseline systems. Like trying to transplant organs between species, rejection is inevitable." Zara sat up slowly, body showing the age-related decline that 45 years of baseline metabolism produced. Joint stiffness enhanced humans at 80 wouldn't experience, muscle mass loss enhanced humans at 120 would avoid, cellular efficiency degradation enhanced humans optimization prevented. 52 years old and approaching elderly by baseline standards. Enhanced humans at 52 were barely entering middle age. "If the Sky Healer can't help us," Zara said quietly, "then no one can." The words struck harder than intended. Thalia, an immortal biologist who'd created enhanced humans, who'd optimized genetics for longevity, who'd given 47 bloodlines advantages that would persist for millennia, couldn't extend baseline lifespan by a single year. Couldn't undo the biological hierarchy she'd embedded in human genetics. Couldn't fix what she'd made. "I'm sorry," Thalia repeated, inadequate words for permanent failure. Zara left with medical attendants, walking with the careful gait of someone whose joints no longer flowed smoothly, whose balance wasn't relatively steady, whose body was preparing for a decline that had been postponed for another century, 52 years into a 60-year lifespan. 7 years remaining if she matched average baseline longevity. Maybe 10 with good fortune. While enhanced humans her age had 150 years ahead. Thalia stood alone in her laboratory after Zara departed, surrounded by documentation of 47 failed attempts to extend baseline human lifespan. 47 volunteers. 47 hopes. 47 confirmations that what she'd created couldn't be shared with population she'd left unmodified. Her hands were trembling. That realization shocked her more than the experimental failure. In 55,000 years, her hands had never trembled. Perfect immortal control over biological functions, conscious command of every physical process, precision that made surgery possible at cellular scales without technological assistance. But watching Zara walk away to die in less than a decade while Thalia would live forever, that made her hands shake for the first time in 55 millennia. She documented experiment 47 with clinical precision that masked the emotion her trembling hands revealed. Subject, baseline female, age 52, healthy across all standard metrics. Intervention, telomere extension, DNA repair activation, metabolic optimization. Initial response, positive across all systems for 3.2 hours. Cascade failure, complete rejection, return to baseline function by hour 4.1. Conclusion, baseline biology is resistant to enhancement modifications. Lifespan extension, impossible with current knowledge. The same conclusion she'd reached 46 times before. The same recognition that enhanced and baseline humans were biologically distinct in ways she couldn't bridge, couldn't fix, couldn't undo. That she'd created genetic aristocracy with permanent advantages she couldn't share with the population she'd left behind. I made them worse by comparison, Thalia whispered to the empty laboratory, the words carrying recognition she'd been avoiding for 2 years. Baseline biology was adequate for baseline lifespan. Then I created enhanced humans who live 3 times longer. Made baseline mortality look like failure instead of a natural conclusion. The crystalline displays hummed softly, bioluminescent light making advanced technology feel organic rather than artificial. Beautiful space. Precise instruments. Comprehensive capabilities. All of it is useless for extending baseline human lifespan by a single day. Thalia saved her analysis, added experiment 47 to the documentation of failure, and stood in a laboratory that felt more like a confession chamber than a medical facility. 47 experiments. 47 failures. No experiment 48 planned because she finally understood what biology was teaching her. Baseline humans couldn't be enhanced after the fact. Enhancement required genetic restructuring before birth, optimization during development, and changes that made enhanced humans fundamentally different rather than simply improved baseline humans. She created 2 populations. And the gap between them was unbridgeable. Thalia's laboratory, next morning. The comprehensive population health assessment data arrived as morning light filtered through the laboratory's windows, data she'd been collecting for 12 months across all partnership territories, documenting biological patterns that political institutions needed to understand even if understanding changed nothing. Thalia opened the analysis with clinical detachment that lasted approximately 30 seconds before emotional weight overwhelmed professional distance. Enhanced human population health assessment. Sample size, 2,847 individuals across all age ranges. Average lifespan, 187 years, projected, based on the oldest enhanced humans currently 172 years age range, 0 to 172 years. Age-related decline onset, 120 to 135 years average. Cellular repair function, 320% baseline efficiency. Metabolic optimization, 287% baseline efficiency. Immune response, 294% baseline capacity. Disease resistance, enhanced across all measured categories. Physical capability maintenance, robust through age 110, gradual decline 110 to 140. Cognitive function, stable through age 130, minimal decline 130 to 160. Reproductive viability, males through age 150, females through age 95. Overall health status, excellent across age ranges, minimal chronic conditions. The data painted a picture of biological optimization, producing a population that aged slowly, remained healthy longer, and maintained capabilities well beyond the baseline human elderly designation. Enhanced humans at 80 were physically and cognitively equivalent to baseline humans at 35. Enhanced humans at 120 were equivalent to baseline humans at 55. Then the baseline data. Baseline human population health assessment. Sample size, 12,394 individuals across all age ranges. Average lifespan, 59 years, unchanged from pre-enhancement historical average age range, 0 to 73 years, current maximum, exceptional longevity age-related decline onset, 40 to 48 years average. Cellular repair function, 100% standard, evolutionary baseline metabolic optimization, 100% standard. Immune response, 100% standard baseline capacity. Disease resistance, standard human vulnerability. Physical capability maintenance, decline beginning at 40 to 45, significant by 55. Cognitive function, stable through 50, noticeable decline 55 plus. Reproductive viability, males through 65, females through 45. Overall health status, age appropriate across ranges, chronic conditions increase 50 plus. The baseline data showed normalcy. Standard human biology functioning as evolution designed it, unchanged by 6,000 years of immortal presence, adequate for a 60-year lifespan, but appearing dramatically inferior compared to enhanced optimization. Thalia's consciousness processed the comparison she'd been avoiding for 6 years. Enhanced humans lived an average of 187 years. Baseline humans lived an average of 59 years. The gap was 128 years. Enhanced humans lived more than twice as long as unenhanced humans, spending entire baseline lifespan still in middle age, aging so slowly that baseline elderly were their biological juveniles. She created a biological hierarchy that made enhanced humans objectively, measurably, and permanently superior in longevity, health, and capability retention across the lifespan. And made baseline humans appear deficient by comparison, even though baseline biology hadn't changed. It just looked worse standing next to optimization, it couldn't match. Then the hybrid data, the population she'd encouraged as bridge between enhanced and baseline. Hybrid human population health assessment. Sample size, 327 individuals, complete population assessment, average projected lifespan, 118 years, intermediate between enhanced and baseline age range, 0 to 64 years, oldest hybrid currently alive fertility assessment, 27% show reduced fertility compared to both parent populations. Severe reproductive challenges, 8%, clinical infertility likely chromosomal compatibility analysis, evidence of genetic incompatibility between enhanced and baseline systems. Cellular function, intermediate across all metrics, averaging enhanced and baseline reproductive system function, compromised in a significant minority due to chromosomal misalignment. Overall health, generally robust, but fertility challenges indicate biological incompatibility. Thalia stared at the hybrid fertility data with the sick recognition of a creator confronting consequences she hadn't predicted. 27% reduced fertility. 8% are likely infertile. Population-wide pattern indicating that enhanced and baseline genetics weren't just different, they were incompatible at the reproductive system level. Speciation. The word emerged from biological understanding with mathematical certainty. Enhanced and baseline humans were diverging into separate species, unable to interbreed successfully. Hybrids weren't a bridge population, they were evidence of incompatibility, a transitional population experiencing consequences of genetic configurations that couldn't merge without creating reproductive dysfunction. She pulled up speciation timeline projections based on current genetic divergence rates, chromosomal incompatibility patterns, and reproductive isolation trends. The quantum modeling ran for 30 seconds before producing an estimate. Estimated timeline to complete speciation, 5 to 8 centuries. Assuming current population mixing patterns continue. It could accelerate if social separation preceded biological separation. It could slow down if extensive genetic mixing occurred before reproductive isolation was completed. But the trajectory was clear, even if the timeline had uncertainty. Enhanced and baseline humans were becoming separate species. Partnership was trying to unite populations that biology was dividing at the cellular level. And hybrids proved the division was already advanced enough to compromise reproduction in a significant minority. Thalia documented the findings with clinical precision that felt like an archaeological assessment of civilization-ending catastrophe. A detached cataloging of disaster she'd helped create, biological determinism undermining institutional structures designed to prevent hierarchy, genetics asserting themselves regardless of political principles. A partnership was built upon. She'd made enhanced humans and given them optimization that would make them live longer, stay healthier, and maintain capabilities well past baseline decline. Thought she was improving the human condition through biological advancement, creating partners capable of understanding the immortal perspective, helping bridge the gap between mortal and immortal. Instead, she'd created a speciation crisis that would divide humanity permanently, had fractured a single species into separate populations that couldn't reproduce with one another. Had built hierarchy into genetics themselves, unfixable, permanent, heritable, compounding across generations as enhanced advantages accumulated and baseline limitations persisted. The data display glowed softly in morning light, a comprehensive assessment quantifying biological reality that political institutions had to accommodate rather than solve, partnership claiming equality while genetics proved hierarchy. The baseline dignity philosophy seeks to assert worth despite capability differences. Enhanced humans are living proof that capability differences were enormous, permanent, and embedded in biology itself. Thalia saved the analysis, knowing it would need to be presented to partnership councils, knowing the numbers would devastate baseline populations who'd been living with biological inequality without seeing it quantified so starkly. Knowing she'd created this. All of it. Every number measuring advantage she'd given to some, disadvantage she'd imposed on others through leaving them unmodified. Her hands were trembling again. Uruk streets, afternoon. Thalia walked through Uruk's public spaces after reviewing population health data, needing to see with her own eyes what statistics had quantified with such precision. The numbers were devastating. The visual reality was worse. In the market plaza, a baseline mother, maybe 32 years old, haggled with a merchant over grain prices. Her face showed weathering that 32 years of baseline metabolism had produced, fine lines around the eyes, slight sagging at the jawline, and skin texture showing early age-related changes. An enhanced woman nearby, perhaps 80 years old, bargained at the adjacent stall with a face that looked younger than the baseline woman's, skin still showing the elasticity the baseline woman had lost, movements fluid where the baseline woman showed slight stiffness. 32 baseline years produced more visible aging than 80 enhanced years. The comparison wasn't fair. Biology wasn't fair. Near a public fountain, baseline children asked their grandmother, 52 years old, hair entirely gray, movements careful, why the elderly person across the plaza looked younger despite being 140 years old. Grandmother had no answer that didn't acknowledge fundamental unfairness. Enhanced elder was older than anyone in the baseline child's family lineage going back 3 generations, yet appeared more vital than the grandmother approaching elderly designation. In the artisan quarter, a baseline craftsman, 47 years old, was retiring due to declining manual dexterity, age-related vision changes, and joint pain that made detailed work difficult. Enhanced craftsman nearby, 95 years old, was just reaching complete mastery of his craft, decades ahead of when capability would decline, a century of productive work remaining. At the same time, the baseline craftsman faced the elderly years with declining function. Every interaction revealed the biological hierarchy Thalia had created. Every comparison showed optimization she'd given to some, standard function she'd left in others. Every moment made genetic inequality visible in daily life, baseline humans aging visibly, dying relatively young, experiencing decline, enhanced humans wouldn't face for another century. Enhanced humans thriving with lifespans that exceeded entire baseline family lineages, maintaining capabilities that baseline humans lost by middle age, living proof that biological advantages were real, enormous, permanent. Thalia saw her creation everywhere. Couldn't escape consequences. Couldn't stop noticing that baseline humans looked older than enhanced humans, even though they were twice their chronological age. Couldn't avoid recognizing that she'd built hierarchy into bodies themselves, unfixable through any infrastructure redesign, unsolvable through any resource redistribution, permanent feature of human biology that partnership had to accommodate rather than change. In a residential courtyard, she overheard baseline parents discussing their children's futures. Should they encourage marriage with enhanced partners, access to advantages, or baseline partners, genetic solidarity? Enhanced baseline unions produced hybrids with intermediate lifespans, possible fertility challenges, and belonging to neither population. Baseline unions produce baseline children facing the same biological limitations, aging as fast, dying as young. Enhanced unions consolidated advantages, compounded optimization, and created genetic dynasties. The parents chose genetic solidarity. Better to age and die together than produce hybrid children experiencing a biological middle ground that created perpetual exclusion. Thalia understood their choice. Hated understanding it. Hated that partnership was forcing baseline humans to choose between accessing advantages, through hybrid children who'd face fertility challenges, or maintaining identity, through baseline children who'd face mortality disadvantage. She created this. All of it. Every impossible choice, every visible inequality, every biological hierarchy that daily life made undeniable. Walking back to her laboratory as the sunset painted Uruk gold, Thalia saw a family gathering for the evening meal, 3 generations, the oldest member 58, the youngest an infant. Enhanced family nearby, 5 generations, oldest member 162, youngest infant, 4 generations between them all still living because enhanced longevity meant great-great-grandparents remain vital. Baseline family, 3 generations spanning 58 years. Enhanced family, 5 generations spanning 162 years. That wasn't an inequality that a partnership could legislate away. That was biology asserting itself regardless of political principles. That was speciation making itself visible through generational structures that reflected genetic optimization versus standard function. Thalia returned to the laboratory, knowing tomorrow she'd present population health data to the Partnership Council. Knowing baseline representatives would see quantification of inequality they'd been experiencing without full recognition. Knowing enhanced representatives would process advantages they'd been benefiting from without conscious acknowledgement. Knowing hybrids would see their fertility challenges revealed as a population pattern rather than a personal tragedy. Knowing everyone would understand that biology determined outcomes institutions couldn't change, that genetics inscribed hierarchy partnership couldn't overcome, that speciation was accelerating regardless of political commitments to unity. Her creation. Her responsibility. Her permanent failure is embedded in human genetics across generations, outlasting civilizations. The evening sky darkened as Thalia prepared the presentation that would force the partnership to confront the biological reality it had been avoiding for 50 years, since enhanced bloodlines had begun to show their full advantages. Tomorrow, everyone would see what she'd seen today. Biology doesn't negotiate with ethics. Enhanced humans live longer. Baseline humans die younger. And no partnership structure can change genetic reality. Sophia visits Thalia, after midnight. Sophia found Thalia in the laboratory, surrounded by documentation of 47 failed experiments, population health data displays showing unfixable inequality, and projection models revealing speciation timelines. "You're trying to fix what can't be fixed," Sophia said, not as criticism but as recognition of a pattern she'd seen developing across 2 years of Thalia's increasingly desperate research. "I created genetic aristocracy," Thalia replied without looking away from displays showing biological hierarchy quantified across every health metric. Permanent biological inequality. Speciation is accelerating because of the enhancements I designed. Someone should try to fix that. "You saved the species from extinction," Sophia countered, moving to stand beside her friend. "Both things are true. Survival doesn't erase violation." Thalia gestured at hybrid fertility data. "I optimized enhanced biology. Left baseline unchanged. Created a permanent hierarchy embedded in genetics itself. Made baseline humans appear deficient by comparison, even though their biology is adequate for what it was designed to do. That's a violation regardless of whether the intervention prevented extinction." Sophia absorbed this, the educator's mind recognizing the philosophical weight Thalia was carrying. What's Saduri's fertility status? The question shifted focus from population to person. Sophia's hybrid daughter, now 47 years old, was diagnosed 2 years ago with reduced fertility. 27% reduced probability compared to both enhanced and baseline populations, Thalia said. Clinical precision masking emotional weight of telling a friend her daughter's fertility challenges were evidence of broader biological incompatibility. She's part of a population-wide pattern. Not personal tragedy, systemic evidence. Evidence of what? Evidence that enhanced and baseline populations are biologically incompatible. That hybrids experience reproductive dysfunction because their genetics contain configurations that can't fully merge. That I thought I was building bridges. Thalia's voice cracked slightly. I created orphans. Population that fits nowhere, experiences biological middle ground that produces perpetual exclusion, proves through their existence that populations I'm trying to unite are separating at the cellular level. Sophia processed this with the complex emotions of a mother watching her daughter become evidence of the consequences of an immortal intervention. Siduri wasn't just a hybrid facing an identity crisis. She was living proof that the partnership assumption of biological compatibility was false. Her fertility challenges weren't personal misfortune, they were a genetic reality indicating speciation acceleration. Does she know? Sophia asked. Are her fertility challenges a population pattern? Tomorrow's Partnership Council presentation includes comprehensive hybrid data. Everyone will know. Thalia finally looked at Sophia. I'm sorry. Your daughter becomes evidence in a public health crisis. Her personal struggle becomes a systemic data point. That's not fair to her. Nothing about hybrid existence is fair to them, Sophia said quietly, recognizing that having a daughter, partly to solve the problem immortal intervention created, had positioned Siduri as living evidence of an unsolvable problem. I thought hybrid children would experience the advantages of both populations. Instead, they experience disadvantages of incompatibility between populations. They experience biological middle ground, Thalia clarified. Intermediate lifespan has an average of 118 years, longer than baseline, shorter than enhanced. Intermediate capabilities are better than baseline, not matching enhanced. And for 27%, fertility challenges are from chromosomal incompatibility. They're a transitional population experiencing divergence between populations that are separating. Transitional, Sophia repeated, testing the word's implications. Not a permanent bridge. Temporary evidence of the separation process. Yes. Enhanced and baseline are diverging into separate species. Hybrids prove divergence is already advanced enough to compromise reproduction. In 5 to 8 centuries, reproductive isolation will be complete. Enhanced and baseline won't be able to produce viable offspring together. Speciation finalized. Sophia absorbed the timeline showing her daughter's biological existence, proving humanity's division. Partnership is trying to unite populations that biology is separating. Yes. Political institutions assume biological compatibility. Reality proves otherwise. Hybrids aren't a solution, they're evidence that the assumption was wrong from the beginning. Thalia paused. I'm sorry. I know that means Siduri's existence proves my point. That's a burden I've placed on her by encouraging enhanced baseline unions without fully understanding the consequences. You didn't know hybrids would experience fertility challenges, Sophia said, defending her friend even as recognizing criticism was valid. Didn't know. Should have known. Should have predicted that genetic optimization and standard genetics wouldn't fully merge without creating reproductive dysfunction. Should have understood speciation risk before encouraging a population that would experience consequences. Thalia's hands were trembling again, visible even in the laboratory's dim light. I experiment with human biology. Consequences are permanent. Mistakes are embedded in genetics for generations. That's the burden of being a creator who can't undo what she's made. They stood in silence for a moment, two immortals confronting the consequences of intervention designed to help, yet producing a hierarchy impossible to reverse. Tomorrow's presentation will devastate baseline populations, Sophia said, returning to practical concern. Seeing biological inequality quantified, understanding its permanence, recognizing that no solution exists. How do you present that without destroying partnership morale? I don't know, Thalia admitted. Data is what it is. Enhanced humans live 3 times longer than baseline humans. That's unfair. That's unchangeable. That's reality. A partnership has to accommodate rather than solve. Pretending otherwise is dishonest. But honesty might be cruel, Sophia observed. Less cruel than continued pretense, Thalia countered. Baseline humans are experiencing biological inequality without understanding its full extent. Enhanced humans are benefiting from advantages without recognizing their magnitude. Hybrids are living evidence of incompatibility, yet their challenges are not acknowledged as systemic. Everyone deserves honesty, even if honesty is painful. And what do you say when they ask if you can fix it? Sophia pressed. When baseline populations demand life extension. When enhanced populations feel guilty for advantages they didn't choose. When do hybrids want fertility treatments? I say I can't fix what I made. Thalia's voice carried the weight of 55,000 years meeting an unfixable problem. Can't extend baseline lifespans. 47 experiments proved baseline biology rejects enhancement modifications. Can't reduce enhanced lifespans. That's martyrdom for principle, morally unacceptable. Can't cure hybrid fertility challenges. They're not a disease but a consequence of genetic incompatibility. Biology determines outcomes institutions can't change. That's the truth. Unpleasant. Permanent. True. Sophia absorbed this recognition of limits, creator confronting unfixable consequences, healer unable to heal, immortal unable to grant longevity she herself possessed. What can you do? Sophia asked, shifting from impossible to achievable. Help baseline humans live as well as possible within the lifespans biology gave them, Thalia replied, commitment forming even as she spoke. Can't extend life can improve the quality of life. Palliative care. Pain management. Preventive medicine maximizes healthy years. Dignity medicine makes the elderly years as comfortable as possible. That's redemption, accepting what I can't change, improving what I can. That's accepting limits, Sophia said, recognizing a shift from desperate fixing to compassionate accommodation. That's accepting reality, Thalia corrected. I made enhanced humans. Can't unmake them. Made baseline humans appear deficient by comparison. Can't undo that comparison. Created a speciation crisis. Can't reverse genetic divergence. But I can dedicate the remaining immortal existence to helping baseline populations live as well as possible within the biological constraints my intervention created. Sophia heard a transformation in a friend's voice, from desperate savior trying to fix everything to humble healer working within constraints she couldn't change. Different kind of redemption. More honest. More sustainable. Tomorrow will be difficult, Sophia said quietly. Tomorrow reveals the truth that will devastate multiple populations simultaneously, Thalia agreed. But truth is a necessary foundation for a partnership that works with biological reality instead of pretending reality doesn't exist. Painful honesty is better than comfortable lies. They remained in the laboratory as midnight deepened, two immortals preparing for a revelation that would force partnership to confront an unfixable biological inequality embedded in human genetics, a hierarchy that no institutional structure could solve, and speciation accelerating regardless of political commitments to unity. Tomorrow, everyone would see what Thalia had seen for 2 years. Biology doesn't negotiate with ethics. And creators can't undo what they've made, only work within the consequences their creation produced. Partnership Council Chamber, Uruk, morning session. The whole Partnership Council assembled with the nervous energy of a government about to confront a crisis whose outlines were visible but whose extent was uncertain. Enhanced and baseline representatives, hybrid delegates, immortal advisors, regional leaders, and everyone gathered because Thalia had requested an emergency session to present a comprehensive biological assessment with partnership implications requiring immediate attention. Translation: bad news requiring a collective response. Thalia stood at the center of the chamber, crystalline displays inactive, clinical composure masking trembling hands hidden behind the presentation platform. 55,000 years of medical expertise are about to reveal a permanent hierarchy embedded in human biology, and no partnership structure could solve it. Speciation is accelerating despite political commitments to unity. I've completed a comprehensive population health assessment, Thalia began, voice carrying professional detachment that wouldn't last long. Data collected over 12 months across all partnership territories. Enhanced, baseline, and hybrid populations. The findings have partnership implications that require honest discussion about the biological reality we've been avoiding for 50 years. She activated the displays, a holographic data-filling chamber centered so everyone could see, starting with enhanced population health metrics. Enhanced human population, average lifespan 187 years based on current projections from the oldest enhanced humans. Age-related decline onset between 120 and 135 years. Cellular repair function is 320% of baseline efficiency. Metabolic optimization is 287% of baseline. Immune response, 294% of baseline capacity. Physical and cognitive function maintained robustly through age 110, with a gradual decline thereafter, but remaining superior to baseline capability across all age ranges. The enhanced representatives saw the advantages they'd been benefiting from, but they hadn't seen them quantified so starkly. An average lifespan. 200 to 300% efficiency improvements across biological systems. Capability maintenance well past baseline elderly designation. Then baseline data. Baseline human population, average lifespan 59 years, unchanged from pre-enhancement historical patterns. Age-related decline onset between 40 and 48 years. Cellular repair function, metabolic optimization, and immune response are all 100% standard evolutionary baseline adequate for a 60-year lifespan. Physical and cognitive decline begins at 45, significant by 55. Baseline biology functioning as evolution designed, unchanged by 6,000 years of immortal presence. The numbers floated in holographic space like an accusation. Enhanced, 187 years. Baseline, 59 years. The gap was 128 years, enhanced humans living more than entire baseline lifespans beyond what baseline humans achieved, spending baseline human elderly years still in middle age by enhanced standards. Silence filled the chamber as representatives absorbed the comparison. Enhanced humans live 3 times longer than baseline humans, Thalia stated with clinical precision. That disparity is permanent. Unfixable with current knowledge. Based on 47 experimental attempts to extend baseline lifespan, I can confirm baseline biology rejects enhancement modifications after birth. Genetic optimization must occur during development. Baseline adults cannot be enhanced. Therefore, the longevity gap between populations is a biological reality that partnership must accommodate rather than solve. Shearer baseline leader, 64 years old, showing age-related decline that made his mortality visible spoke first. You're confirming what we experience daily but hoped wasn't permanent. We age. They don't. We die. They continue. That's not partnership structure that's waiting for baseline voices to age out while enhanced voices persist for centuries. That's biological reality determining governance outcomes, Thalia confirmed. Enhanced leaders will govern for multiple baseline generations. Baseline leaders will cycle through mortality while enhanced peers remain vital. That's unfixable inequality embedded in genetics. Enkidu, enhanced leader, 70 years old, still decades from middle age, processed implications. We didn't choose biological advantages. Immortals gave them to us, and we didn't request intervention from them. Should we apologize for living longer? Feel guilty for robust health we didn't select? No, Thalia said simply. Acknowledgement isn't an apology. Recognition isn't guilt. You have advantages. That's a fact. Didn't choose them. Still have them. Both things are true. Partnership requires honesty about advantages rather than pretending they don't exist or apologizing for existing. Then the hybrid data. Hybrid population assessment reveals fertility challenges in a significant minority. Thalia displayed chromosomal analysis showing genetic incompatibility patterns. 27% show reduced fertility compared to both parent populations. 8% face severe reproductive challenges likely resulting in clinical infertility. Hybrid biology experiences chromosomal incompatibility between enhanced and baseline genetic configurations. Reproductive systems require precise genetic alignment. Hybrids contain configurations that can't fully merge without creating dysfunction. Siduri, hybrid delegate, 47 years old, sitting in the chamber, knowing her personal fertility challenges were about to become population data, felt her private struggle transform into public evidence as Thalia continued. Hybrids aren't a bridge population partnership assumed they'd be. They're a transitional population experiencing consequences of genetic divergence between enhanced and baseline. Their fertility challenges prove populations are biologically incompatible, already diverged enough that successful interbreeding is compromised in a significant minority. Thalia paused, letting that sink in, then delivered a conclusion that would devastate the partnership's biological assumptions. Enhanced and baseline humans are becoming separate species. Current genetic divergence patterns, chromosomal incompatibility evidence, and reproductive isolation trends all indicate speciation is accelerating, the best estimate based on comprehensive modeling, 5 to 8 centuries until reproductive isolation is complete. Enhanced and baseline populations will be unable to produce viable offspring together. Speciation finalized. The chamber erupted not with shouting but with shocked silence more devastating than noise, a partnership built on the assumption that biological compatibility would allow unity. Reality proves the assumption false. Enhanced and baseline diverging into separate species regardless of political commitments, institutional structures, and cultural integration efforts. Biology didn't negotiate with partnership councils. And biology was determining speciation regardless of governance decisions. NC's home, baseline quarter, evening after council. NC returned home carrying the weight of biological data that quantified what he'd been experiencing for 58 years without full recognition. His wife, Rana, 56 years old, looked up from preparing the evening meal, saw the expression on his face, and knew immediately that the council session had revealed something devastating. "How bad?" she asked simply. "We live 59 years on average," NC said, sitting heavily in a chair that felt less comfortable than it had this morning, body reminding him at 58 that decline was accelerating. "They live an average of 187 years. The gap is permanent. Unfixable." The Sky Healer confirmed baseline biology rejects enhancement after birth. Rana absorbed this with the quiet dignity of someone who'd spent 56 years watching enhanced neighbors age barely at all while she weathered visibly. "So we die." They continue. "We die while they're still middle-aged," NC clarified. "I'm 58. Enhanced peers I grew up with, Ishara, Ninlil, others, they're in their 50s and 60s, still decades from elderly. I'm approaching death. They're approaching full capability." Their daughter, Marit, 33 years old, entered from the adjacent room where she'd been settling her own children for sleep. "I heard. 3 times our lifespan. Is that true?" "That's biological reality," NC confirmed. Enhanced genetics optimize for longevity. Baseline genetics don't have those optimizations. It can't be added after birth. We're 2 populations with fundamentally different aging rates. Their granddaughter, Eliana, 9 years old, appeared in the doorway with direct questions children ask before learning to cushion the truth with politeness. "Are we going to die as grandfather Ruel did?" Ruel NC's father, dead 3 years ago at 61 after age-related decline that enhanced humans wouldn't experience until 140. Everyone in the room remembered his mortality. Everyone understood enhanced humans. Ruel's age was still vital, thriving, planning the next century of life. "Yes," NC said, because honesty was dignity. "We're going to die younger than enhanced people. That's not fair. That's biological reality. Doesn't make us worth less. Just makes our lives shorter." Why? Simple question carrying the weight of an unfair universe. Because Sky Healer gave enhanced people biological advantages 50 years ago, Rana explained, mother's voice gentle despite harsh content. Made them live longer, stay healthier, age more slowly. Didn't give those advantages to everyone. Now we're 2 populations with different lifespans. "Can't she fix us?" Eliana asked, a child's faith in immortal capability meeting the adult reality of unfixable biology. "No," NC said gently. She tried. 47 times. Baseline biology rejects enhancement modifications. We're designed to live 60 years. That design can't be changed after we're born. Eliana processed this with a 9-year-old's concrete thinking. "So I'll die when I'm 60, and enhanced children born today will still be alive?" "Yes," NC confirmed, stomach twisting at the thought of having to explain to a 9-year-old granddaughter the inequality of mortality. "You'll live 60 years. Enhanced children will live 180 years. That's 3 times longer. That's unfair. That's unchangeable." "That's not fair," Eliana said, tears welling. No, Incy agreed, pulling his granddaughter close. It's not fair. And it's not wrong to say it's not fair. Enhanced people got biological advantages they didn't choose. We didn't get those advantages. Both things are true. Doesn't make enhanced people bad. Doesn't make us less valuable. Just makes life unequal in a way nobody can fix. Mari watched her daughter cry about mortality baseline children understood by adolescents, but enhanced children wouldn't confront until their century mark. How do we teach them to value life when life is 3 times shorter than their enhanced peers? By living fully in time we have, Incy said, not because he believed it completely but because the alternative was accepting that a shorter life meant a less meaningful life. Enhanced people live longer. We live fully. Different measurements. Both have worth. Do they? Mari pressed. When enhanced leaders govern for centuries, and baseline leaders cycle through mortality. When enhanced families have 5 generations and baseline families have 3. When a partnership requires equal voices, but biology makes baseline voices temporary. The questions hung unanswered because Incy had no answers that made inequality seem just. Just had dignity claimed that worth wasn't measured by lifespan length, that baseline existence mattered despite enhanced advantages, that partnership required equal participation despite unequal biology. But saying it didn't make it feel true when my granddaughter cried about dying at 60, while enhanced children would live to 180. I'll die, Incy said quietly, looking at the family gathered around the evening table that enhanced families across Uruk were gathering around too. Within 5 years, probably. 10 if I'm fortunate. You'll govern without me. Enhanced peers I grew up with will still be here, still leading, still vigorous. That's not partnership equality. That's waiting for descent to age out. Then why stay in partnership? Mari asked, voice carrying frustration, as daughter felt watching father approach mortality, while enhanced leaders persisted for generations. Because separation doesn't extend our lives, Incy replied. Partnership acknowledges inequality, works to compensate rather than pretend it doesn't exist. Separation just makes us face shortened lifespans without institutional support. Better to be honestly unequal within a partnership than equally mortal alone. Rana spoke quietly. Your father said a similar thing the week before he died. Said baseline dignity wasn't about living as long. It was about mattering despite dying sooner. I didn't understand then. I think I'm starting to now. Baseline dignity, Incy repeated, testing a phrase that would need philosophical development beyond family conversation. We matter because we matter. Not because we live as long. Not because we match their capabilities. Because consciousness has worth regardless of the biological container's longevity. Eliana looked up from her grandfather's embrace. Even if I only live 60 years? Especially then, Incy said, hoping his granddaughter would believe what he was still learning to accept. Because your 60 years matter as much as their 180 years. Different duration. Equal significance. That's dignity. That's what partnership needs to recognize if it's going to work. The family sat in evening light, knowing tomorrow baseline populations across partnership territories would be processing the same devastating data, the same unfair reality, the same question of whether a shorter life meant a less meaningful life. Incy held his granddaughter and thought about Sherer's observation at the council. Baseline leadership was temporary, enhanced leadership was multi-generational. He'd die, and enhanced peers would govern. His voice would end, theirs would continue. That was biological inequality embedded in the governance structure itself. Partnership required equal voices. Biology made baseline voices ephemeral while enhanced voices persisted for centuries. No institutional structure could solve that. Only acceptance of permanent inequality and commitment to compensate rather than pretend equality existed. Tomorrow, he'd need to help develop the baseline dignity philosophy beyond family conversation. Today, he just held his granddaughter, who learned at 9 that she'd die while enhanced peers were barely entering middle age, and tried to believe that a shorter life meant equally meaningful life. Tried to believe partnership could survive honest recognition of unfixable biological hierarchy. Tried to believe worth wasn't measured in years. Enhanced quarter gathering, same evening. Durga stood before the assembled enhanced community in the quarter meeting hall, processing biological data with the engineer's pragmatic assessment of reality that required accommodation rather than denial. We live 187 years on average, Durga said, clinical voice addressing 63 enhanced residents who'd gathered after the council session. Baseline populations live 59 years. That's 3 times longer lifespan. Biological advantage we didn't choose. Can't undo. Need to acknowledge honestly. The assembled enhanced humans, ages ranging from 28 to 117, processed advantages they've been benefiting from without seeing them quantified so starkly. Some faces showed guilt. Others showed relief at honesty finally surfacing. Most showed confusion about what acknowledgement was required. Should we apologize? Asked Kemuel, 37, partnered with an enhanced woman, feeling guilty about the advantages. We didn't choose biological optimization, but we benefit from it. Does that require an apology? Apology for what? Durga countered, engineering pragmatism cutting through emotional confusion. For existing? What did our ancestors have in common with genetic immortality? For living the lifespans our biology produces naturally? For having advantages baseline humans don't have, Kemuel pressed. Advantage exists, Durga said flatly. That's a fact. Didn't choose it. Still have it. Acknowledgement isn't an apology. Recognition isn't guilt. We live longer. That's true. Should we feel guilty about the truth? Ninlil, enhanced engineer, 62 years old, friend to baseline populations, spoke carefully, but advantage produces inequality partnership claims to prevent. We govern for multiple baseline generations. Our voices persist while theirs cycle through mortality. That structural hierarchy biology creates regardless of political principles. Then partnership adapts to biological reality, Durga replied. Can't change genetics. Can change governance structures to acknowledge genetic inequality. Rotate leadership despite longevity. Ensure baseline voices are renewed as individuals age. Compensate for unfixable biological hierarchy rather than pretend hierarchy doesn't exist. That's accepting we're superior, someone objected from the back of the room. That's accepting we have advantages, Durga corrected sharply. Superior is judgment. Advantage is a description. We live longer, that's a capability advantage. Doesn't make us better people. Makes us biologically optimized people. Different thing. She pulled up holographic displays showing comparative data. Enhanced, 187 years. Baseline, 59 years. Hybrid, 118 years. Numbers don't lie. Biology doesn't negotiate. The question is what we do with the advantages we didn't choose but definitely possess. What do you propose? Asked Ishara, 48 years old, a mathematician who'd lived with enhanced processing speed her entire life, now processing the longevity advantage she'd taken for granted. Honesty, Durga said simply. Stop pretending we don't have advantages. Stop feeling guilty about advantages we didn't choose. Acknowledge reality. Use advantages responsibly. Support baseline populations in ways that compensate for biological inequality we can't fix. Like what? Kemuel pressed. How do we compensate for living 3 times longer? By not acting like longer life makes us matter more, Durga replied. By rotating governance so baseline voices don't age out while ours persist. By allocating resources, acknowledging baseline populations need more support within shorter lifespans. By building partnership structures that work with biological reality instead of requiring performance of equality that doesn't exist. Ninlil added, and by acknowledging to baseline populations that we understand the inequality is real, unfair, and permanent. That we're not dismissing their mortality as natural while celebrating our longevity as earned. Both populations received genetic material from the immortal intervention. Theirs weren't modified. Ours were optimized. That's not merit, that's chance. Chance that benefits us for nearly 2 centuries, someone noted quietly. Yes, Durga agreed. Chance that benefits us enormously. For 3 times the life expectancy of baseline populations. That's an advantage. Massive advantage. We didn't choose it. We definitely have it. Honesty requires acknowledging both facts. The gathering continued processing. Enhanced humans ranging from complete guilt shouldn't have advantages, through defensive pragmatism, advantages are real, not our fault, to uncomfortable honesty, have advantages, didn't choose them, still benefit enormously. Finally, a consensus emerged around Durga's position: acknowledgement without apology, recognition without guilt, honest about advantages, responsible for using them, supportive of baseline populations facing mortality inequality, committed to partnership structures compensating for unfixable biological hierarchy. Not satisfying emotionally, but, honestly, practically. Partnership requires honesty, Durga concluded as gathering dispersed. Biology creates hierarchy. Both things are true. We can acknowledge reality without apologizing for existing. Can use advantages responsibly without feeling guilty for having them. Can support baseline populations without pretending our longevity isn't a massive advantage over their mortality. Enhanced residents returned to home still processing, the advantage made visible through quantification, inequality they'd been benefiting from without recognition, now impossible to ignore. Living 3 times longer than baseline populations. That wasn't merit. Wasn't earned. It wasn't a choice. Was there a biological advantage from genetic optimization they'd inherited without selecting? The question was what to do with the advantage now that pretending it didn't exist wasn't an option. Durga's answer: use it responsibly. Acknowledge it honestly. Compensate where possible. Accept that biology creates a hierarchy, and partnership must work with rather than against it. Not an inspiring answer, but a realistic answer to the unfixable inequality embedded in genetics itself. Partnership Council Chamber, emergency session, next day. The council reconvened in an atmosphere of government confronting a crisis with no good responses. Baseline representatives processing mortality inequality. Enhanced representatives processing advantages they'd been taking for granted. Hybrid representatives processing evidence-proved biological incompatibility. Immortals watching populations deal with the consequences of immortal intervention. We need solutions, Scherer said, baseline leader refusing to accept that the data presentation concluded without action proposals. Sky Healer presented a problem. What's the solution? There is no solution that solves the problem, Thalia replied with clinical honesty. Only responses that work within unfixable biological reality. I've attempted to extend baseline lifespans. 47 experimental failures prove baseline biology rejects enhancement modifications after birth. Can't reverse enhanced genetics, that's erasing advantages people were born with, punishing them for biology they didn't choose. Can't cure hybrid fertility challenges, they're not a disease but a consequence of genetic incompatibility between populations. Biology determines outcomes institutions can't change. Then what do you propose? Scherer pressed, frustration visible. Accept inequality? Tell baseline populations to accept dying at 60 while enhanced populations thrive for 2 centuries? I propose honesty about what can and can't be changed, Thalia said. Followed by institutional responses compensating for unfixable biological hierarchy rather than pretending hierarchy doesn't exist. She outlined proposals that felt inadequate but were only realistic options. Proposal 1, Medical Resource Allocation. Enhanced populations receive standard medical care proportional to their population size. Baseline populations receive priority access to preventive medicine, palliative care, and pain management, maximizing quality of life within shorter lifespans. Hybrid populations receive specialized care for fertility challenges and unique biological needs. Resource allocation compensating for biological advantages we can't equalize. Proposal 2, Governance Structure Adaptation. Formal recognition that enhanced longevity creates governance inequality. Enhanced leaders can govern for multiple baseline generations, commitment to rotate leadership despite enhanced capability to continue. Baseline voices must be continuously renewed as individuals age and die. Governance structures working with biological reality rather than requiring performance of equality. Proposal 3, Hybrid Population Support. Fertility support services for hybrids facing reproductive challenges. Acknowledgement that hybrids prove populations are biologically incompatible. ongoing research into hybrid biology without expectation of fixing them. They're not broken, they're experiencing consequences of genetic configurations that can't fully merge. Hybrid autonomy to choose own paths rather than forced mediation between populations. Proposal 4. Speciation monitoring. Continued tracking of enhanced baseline genetic divergence. Quarterly reports on speciation progress. Long-term planning for eventual reproductive isolation. Acceptance that separation is a biological reality over centuries, not partnership failure. The proposals hung in holographic space like an admission of defeat, recognition that biology created problems institutions could only accommodate, not solve. This is accepting permanent hierarchy, someone objected. Admitting enhanced populations are superior. This is accepting permanent advantage, Thalia corrected. Enhanced populations have biological capabilities that baseline populations lack. That's a description, not a judgment. Superior is a value claim. Advantage is a factual claim. Partnership can't pretend that the advantage doesn't exist. Can only build structures compensating for the advantage we can't eliminate. Debate erupted. Some baseline representatives wanted more radical change, mandatory enhanced genetic dilution through forced hybridization, eugenics, morally unacceptable. Some enhanced representatives resisted any compensation, seeing it as punishment for advantages they didn't choose, defensive denial of responsibility for using advantages. Some hybrid representatives wanted fertility treatments, fixing reproductive challenges that weren't disease but genetic reality. Every proposed solution was either impossible, immoral, or both. Finally, Siduri stood, a hybrid delegate who'd been silent throughout the debate, processing the revelation that her personal fertility challenges were evidence of population decline rather than an individual tragedy. "I need to speak," she said quietly, voice carrying weight that silenced the chamber. Everyone turned to the hybrid woman who'd been mediating between enhanced and baseline populations for 25 years, a bridge figure experiencing a biological middle ground that the partnership assumed would unite the populations. "My fertility challenges aren't personal tragedy," Siduri began, clinical tone masking emotional weight. "They're population evidence. I was diagnosed 2 years ago with reduced fertility, 27% probability compared to both enhanced and baseline women my age. Thought it was an individual misfortune. Today I learned that 27% of hybrids show similar patterns. My personal struggle is systemic evidence." She looked around the chamber at enhanced and baseline representatives watching the hybrid testimony. Partnership assumed enhanced and baseline could mix, reproduce, and create a bridge population connecting both populations biologically. We are that population. And our biology proves that the assumption was wrong. 27% fertility reduction. 8% of severe reproductive challenges. We're not failed individuals, we're proof of biological incompatibility between populations. Partnership is trying to unite. Siduri pulled up chromosomal analysis showing genetic configurations in hybrid biology. Enhanced genetics and baseline genetics don't fully merge. Most systems average between them intermediate capability, intermediate longevity. But reproductive systems require precise genetic alignment. Hybrids contain configurations that can't precisely align. The result is fertility challenges in a significant minority. Hybrids aren't bridges, Siduri continued, voice carrying recognition that transformed identity from solution to evidence. We're a transitional population experiencing consequences of divergence between enhanced and baseline, and living proof that populations are biologically incompatible. Evidence that speciation is already advanced enough to compromise reproduction. We don't solve partnership problems, we prove that the partnership was built on a false biological foundation. The chamber absorbed testimony devastating because it was clinical, not emotional, a hybrid woman transforming personal experience into systemic evidence, individual diagnosis into population pattern, private struggle into public proof that partnership assumptions were wrong. Sophia, Siduri's mother, watching daughter testify about consequences Sophia contributed to creating through enhancement teaching. Chapter 4's mother-daughter confrontation now had a public dimension, felt the weight of recognition that having a daughter partly to solve the problem the immortal intervention created had positioned Siduri as living evidence that the problem couldn't be solved biologically. You built a partnership on assumption enhanced, and baselines are biologically compatible enough to unite through mixing, Siduri said, addressing the entire council. We proved that assumption falls through our existence. Can't merge what's biologically separating. Can't create a successful bridge population between populations that are diverging into separate species. Partnership can't be based on biological compatibility. Must be based on something else: institutional structures, ethical commitments, political choice. But not biological unity. Because biology is dividing what politics is trying to unite. She sat down, testimony complete, transformation from individual burden to systemic witness finished. Silence held the chamber as representatives processed the hybrid woman, explaining that her population proved the partnership's biological foundation was false, that the bridge population was actually evidence of incompatibility. That speciation was accelerating regardless of institutional commitments to unity. Finally, Scherer spoke: partnership requires equal voices. But biology makes baseline voices temporary, we die, while enhanced voices persist for centuries. How is that partnership equality? It's not, Thalia admitted. It's an unfixable inequality that partnership must acknowledge and compensate for rather than deny. Can't extend baseline lifespans. Can't reduce enhanced lifespans. Can't cure hybrid fertility challenges. Can only build structures working within biological constraints rather than pretending constraints don't exist. Then we're accepting permanent hierarchy, the baseline representative stated flatly. We're accepting biological reality, Thalia corrected. Hierarchy exists. Created by genetic optimization, some populations received, and others didn't. Unfixable through any intervention available. Partnership either acknowledges reality and compensates or denies reality and fails. Those are options. The vote came after hours of debate, 8-4 in favor of a comprehensive biological inequality response package. Baseline representatives split, with some accepting compensation as realistic and others wanting impossible solutions. Enhanced representatives split, with some supporting equity measures and others resisting what felt like punishment for advantages. Hybrid representatives are unanimous in supporting honesty about biological incompatibility over continued pretense. Resolution passed. Medical resource allocation favors baseline populations, governance adaptation acknowledging longevity inequality. Hybrid support services recognize fertility challenges as a genetic reality. Speciation monitoring accepts reproductive isolation as inevitable. Compromise nobody loved. Reality everyone had to accept. Partnership adapting to biological constraints it couldn't overcome, building equity within permanent inequality, working with genetics that determined outcomes institutions could only accommodate. Biology didn't negotiate with ethics. Partnership learned to negotiate with biology instead. Scherer's residence, late evening. Scherer sat alone in his study after the Partnership Council session, calculating timelines with the precision that 50 years of governance had taught him. Not optimistic projections. Not hopeful speculation. Just the mathematical reality of biological inequality applied to political structure. He was 64 years old. Average baseline lifespan, 59 years. He'd already exceeded average by 5 years. If fortunate, he had another 5 to 10 years before age-related decline made governance impossible. If very fortunate, perhaps he'd reach 73, the exceptional longevity that the current maximum baseline age represented. 10 years. Maybe less. That was his remaining political timeline. Enkidu was 70 years old, enhanced average lifespan, 187 years. Enkidu had 117 years remaining. If he matched average enhanced longevity, he'd govern until year 2719 BCE, 450 years into the future, long past when Scherer's great-great-great-grandchildren would be dust. The other baseline founders of the partnership were similar ages. Aga was 57. Isa was 62. The oldest baseline council member was 68. Within 15 years, the entire baseline founding generation would be dead or too elderly to govern effectively. The enhanced founding generation? Ishara was 48, 139 years remaining. Ninla was 62, 125 years remaining. The youngest enhanced council member was 35, 152 years ahead. The oldest was 117, still had 70 years of vital function remaining, decades past when every baseline founder would be dead. The partnership's founding generation would soon be entirely composed of enhanced survivors. Scherer pulled up governance projection models, applying biological realities to political structures. In 5 years, he'd likely be dead. In 10 years, all baseline founders would be gone. In 15 years, baseline council representation would be entirely new generation, while enhanced representation would remain largely founders. That wasn't partnership equality. That was enhanced voices persisting while baseline voices cycled through generational replacement, experienced leaders replaced by novices every 60 years, while enhanced leaders accumulated centuries of expertise. Governance inequality through lifespan inequality. Biological advantage produces a political hierarchy that no institutional structure could fully compensate for. Enhanced leaders would see 10 baseline generations come and go during their political careers. Would build relationships, accumulate knowledge, and develop influence that baseline leaders couldn't match within a single 60-year lifespan. The door opened. His wife, Esani, 61 years old, showing the age-related decline that made her mortality as visible as his, entered with the intuition that 50 years of partnership produced. "You're calculating how long until you die," she said, not as a question but recognition. "I'm calculating governance implications of biological inequality," Scherer corrected, though her assessment was accurate. "I'll die within 10 years. Enkidu will govern another century beyond that. My voice ends." His continues. "That's not partnership equality, that's waiting for descent to age out." Esani sat beside him, joints showing the stiffness that 61 baseline years had produced, movements careful, unlike the enhanced women her age, who moved fluidly. "You knew this when the partnership was founded. Enhanced humans would outlive baseline humans." "Knew abstractly," Scherer said. "Experiencing concretely is different. Watching myself approach death while Enkidu approaches middle age. Recognizing that the partnership I helped build will be shaped primarily by enhanced voices after baseline founders die. The governance structures we establish will be interpreted by beings who'll live to see 10 baseline generations." "So what do you do?" Esani asked a pragmatic question that cut through philosophical despair. "I govern as well as possible in time remaining," Scherer replied, recognizing the answer even as he spoke it. "Build institutional protections that survive after I'm gone. Train the next generation of baseline leaders, knowing they'll face the same mortality timeline I'm facing. Accept that enhanced longevity creates governance inequality, a partnership must work within rather than solve." He looked at governance projection models showing his timeline ending while enhanced peers continued for centuries. Partnership requires equal voices. But biology makes baseline voices ephemeral. We die, while enhanced voices persist. Can't change biology. Can only build structures ensuring baseline voices are continuously renewed as individuals cycle through mortality. "That's accepting permanent disadvantage," Esani observed. "That's accepting biological reality," Scherer corrected. "Enhanced humans live 3 times longer. That produces governance advantages, experience, relationships, institutional knowledge that baseline humans can't match within single lifespans. No structure can fully compensate for that. But structures can ensure baseline populations maintain representation despite individuals dying while enhanced individuals persist." He saved his analysis and documentation on mortality inequality and its application to governance to inform partnership adaptation after his death. Knowing enhanced peers would read his work decades after his death, centuries after his grandchildren were dust, applying his insights to governance challenges he wouldn't live to see. That was biological inequality embedded in the political structure. Enhanced humans read the wisdom of dead baseline leaders, interpreting it, applying it, and governing based on it, while those leaders' descendants aged and died over multiple generations. "I'll die," Scherer said quietly to his wife, who'd die with him, both within a decade probably. "Enkidu will still be middle-aged. Ishara will be approaching her prime. The partnership will continue without the baseline founders who established it. That's unfair. That's unchangeable. That's reality. Partnership must accommodate rather than deny." Esani took his hand. A 64-year-old baseline man and a 61-year-old baseline woman, both approaching death that enhanced peers wouldn't face for another century, both knowing their voices would end while enhanced voices persisted. "Then make the time you have matter," Esani said with the wisdom that facing mortality produced. "Govern well. Build structures that survive you. Train successors. Accept that enhanced longevity creates inequality while ensuring inequality doesn't become tyranny. That's baseline leadership in partnership with biological hierarchy. Share or absorb this recognition that accepting limits was different from accepting defeat, that working within constraints produced different victories than overcoming constraints. He'd die. They'd govern. Partnership would continue. The question was whether the structures he built now would protect baseline populations after he was gone, or whether enhanced longevity would inevitably produce a governance hierarchy that biological advantages would enable. He returned to governance models, building protections knowing he wouldn't live to see them tested, writing wisdom for future baseline leaders who'd face the same mortality timeline, accepting that unfixable inequality required permanent vigilance rather than a temporary solution. 10 years remaining. Maybe less. Make them matter. Immortal Council Chamber, private session, late night. The 9 immortals gathered in a chamber designed for their exclusive use, debating the response to the biological inequality crisis with the intensity born of recognizing that their intervention had created an unfixable hierarchy. We should formally apologize, Thalia said, proposing a plan she'd been developing for 2 days. Public acknowledgement that the enhancement program created genetic aristocracy. Permanent biological hierarchy. Speciation crisis. We did wrong. Should admit wrong even if we can't fix wrong. Apologizing admits failure, Kronos objected, organizational mind recoiling from acknowledgement that optimal solution produced catastrophic outcomes. We saved humans from extinction. Intervention prevented species death. Survival justifies means, even if means created hierarchy. Survival doesn't erase violation, Thalia countered, the argument she'd been making since population health data revealed the full extent of biological inequality. We optimized enhanced genetics without consent. Left baseline populations unmodified, creating a comparison that makes them appear deficient. Encouraged a hybrid population without fully understanding the fertility consequences. Those are violations regardless of whether intervention prevented extinction. Prometheus spoke carefully, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd given many gifts and watched many gifts produce unintended consequences. Every innovation I've taught, bronze working, agricultural techniques, mathematical systems, enhanced humans to master faster than baseline humans. Amplifies the inequality Thalia created. I didn't intend hierarchy. Intentions don't change outcomes. Maybe an apology acknowledges the gap between intention and consequence. But apology doesn't fix anything, Zephyrus interjected, architect's mind focused on practical solutions rather than symbolic gestures. Can't extend baseline lifespans. Can't undo enhancement. Can't reverse speciation. An apology without a remedy is an admission of permanent failure. That might demoralize the partnership rather than strengthen it. Nix added a mathematical perspective. I've run 16,000 scenarios. A formal apology produces mixed outcomes. 53% probability it strengthens the partnership through honesty, 47% probability it undermines the partnership through admission of unfixable failure. Too close to call. An apology might help or might harm, depending on execution and timing. Erebus, who long advocated for honest intervention rather than benevolent deception, surprised everyone by supporting an apology. Honest intervention requires honest accountability. Can't claim benevolence without acknowledging harm. We saved species and created hierarchy. Both things are true. Apology recognizes both truths instead of defending only positive outcomes while dismissing negative consequences. Sophia spoke quietly, the educator processing that her daughter was evidence of biological incompatibility. Siduri testified that hybrids prove partnership assumptions were wrong. My daughter became evidence of our mistake. I owe her an apology for creating the problem and then discovering she proves it's unsolvable. Personal apology. Maybe the partnership deserves a collective apology for the same reason. Korath added warrior's perspective. I taught legal combat without teaching ethics. Resulted in a massacre. Apologize for my failure, even though I couldn't undo his actions or prevent future military inequality. An apology acknowledged responsibility without fixing the problem. Sometimes acknowledgement matters even when solutions don't exist. Ether, the chronicler, spoke with the weight of someone documenting everything. History will judge us. The question is whether we judge ourselves first. whether we acknowledge mistakes before future historians catalog them. Apology becomes part of the historical record, showing we recognize failure even if we couldn't fix it. The debate continued for 2 hours. Eventually, the vote was called. For apology, Thalia, Erebus, Nyx, Sophia, Korath, acknowledge harm even without remedy. Against apology, Kronos, Prometheus, Zephyrus, Ether, save species, outcomes justify means. 5-4 against apology. Immortals were divided on whether enhancement was a violation or a salvation, whether survival justified hierarchy, and whether acknowledgement mattered without a solution. Then I'll apologize individually, Thalia said after the vote concluded. Can't speak for all immortals. Can speak for myself. I created enhanced humans. Made baseline humans appear deficient by comparison. Encouraged a hybrid population without fully predicting fertility consequences. Those were my choices. My responsibility. My apologies, regardless of whether a collective apology is appropriate. That fractures immortal unity, Kronos warned. Shows humans were not unified in judgment of our own actions. We're not unified, Thalia replied simply. Pretending otherwise is dishonest. Some immortals believe enhancement was justified by survival. Others believe hierarchy wasn't worth that price. Both perspectives have merit. Humans deserve honesty about our division rather than the performance of unified benevolence. The council adjourned with the mortals divided, some believing enhancement had been necessary salvation despite hierarchy produced, others believing hierarchy made salvation questionable, all recognizing they created biological inequality that would persist for millennia regardless of whether they apologized for creating it. Thalia left the council chamber knowing a formal apology wouldn't happen, but an individual acknowledgement would. Knowing some immortals would defend enhancement as a justified intervention, while she acknowledged it as a violation. Knowing immortal division reflected partnership's division, some accept biological hierarchy as an unavoidable reality, while others see it as an unfixable injustice. Both perspectives are true. Both perspectives are incomplete. Both perspectives are necessary for honest partnership working within the constraints imposed by biology. Public Partnership Council, next morning. Thalia stood before the full Partnership Council, enhanced, baseline, hybrid representatives, regional leaders, immortal advisors, to announce redirection of her resources toward equity medicine rather than impossible solutions. I've spent 2 years attempting to extend baseline human lifespans, Thalia began with clinical honesty that had become her trademark. 47 experimental attempts. 47 failures. Baseline biology rejects enhancement modifications after birth. It cannot be changed with current knowledge. Lifespan inequality is a permanent biological reality. She let that settle before continuing. Therefore, I'm redirecting all medical resources toward baseline healthcare equity rather than impossible life extension. Enhanced populations receive the biological advantages I gave them. Baseline populations will receive my undivided medical attention within the lifespan biology established. The announcement produced immediate reactions, some positive, some questioning, all processing a shift from desperate fixing to compassionate acceptance. Specifically, Thalia continued, Baseline Healthcare Initiative will focus on maximizing quality of life within a 60-year average lifespan rather than attempting to extend lifespan beyond biological parameters. Priority areas include pain management, reducing suffering throughout the lifespan, particularly in elderly years when age-related decline accelerates. Enhanced humans experience minimal chronic pain through age 110. Baseline humans experience significant pain at age 55, medical resources dedicated to making baseline elderly years as comfortable as enhanced middle years. Palliative care, dignified end-of-life support acknowledging that baseline humans die on average at 59. Enhanced humans at 59 are barely entering middle age. Can't change mortality timing. Can improve mortality experience through comprehensive palliative services. Preventive medicine, avoiding preventable early death from disease, injury, and childbirth complications. Enhanced humans are resistant to most diseases through an optimized immune response. Baseline humans face standard human vulnerabilities, medical interventions preventing deaths that would further shorten already shortened lifespans. Maternal health, reducing childbirth mortality. Enhanced women experience minimal complications due to optimized reproductive systems. Baseline women face standard human risks. Priority medical support during pregnancy, delivery, and the postpartum period. Elder care, maintaining dignity during age-related decline beginning at age 45 for baseline populations. Enhanced humans don't experience a significant decline until age 120. Baseline humans need support 75 years earlier. Medical resources ensuring baseline elderly maintain quality of life despite declining function. Can't give baseline humans enhanced lifespans, Thalia concluded. Can give them the best possible lives within biological reality. That's equity, compensating for unfixable advantages through resource allocation prioritizing disadvantaged populations. Not solving inequality but working within inequality toward best achievable outcomes. Baseline representatives responded with a mix of gratitude and recognition that compensation wasn't equality. Enhanced representatives showed a mix of support and concern about being deprioritized. Hybrid representatives appreciated acknowledgement that fertility challenges required specialized care without expectation of fixing biology. This is accepting permanent hierarchy, someone objected, same baseline representative who'd objected 2 days ago. This is accepting biological reality and building equity within constraints, Thalia corrected patiently. Enhanced humans live 187 years. Baseline humans live 59 years. That's unfair. That's unchangeable. That's a genetic reality no institution can override. Partnership either acknowledges reality and compensates, or denies reality and fails. In C, baseline leader who'd emerged as dignity philosophy voice, spoke carefully. Baseline populations appreciate medical focus. But dignity isn't just about healthcare. It's worth noting that it's not measured by lifespan length. Partnership must recognize baseline lives matter not because we pretend to live as long as enhanced humans, but because consciousness has worth regardless of the biological container's longevity. Agreed, Thalia said. Healthcare equity is necessary but insufficient. Partnership requires recognizing that shorter lifespans don't diminish baseline worth and that baseline contributions matter, even as individuals cycle through mortality. In contrast, enhanced individuals persist, that partnership values all voices regardless of how long those voices continue. Pretty philosophy, someone said skeptically. How does it work practically when enhanced leaders govern for centuries while baseline leaders die? Through institutional structures rotating leadership despite enhanced longevity, Sophia interjected, an educator, applying teaching principles to governance. Enhanced leaders can serve longer terms but must rotate out regularly. Baseline leaders serve shorter terms, but voices are continuously renewed. Partnership ensuring baseline populations maintain representation through structural commitment rather than relying on enhanced voluntary restraint. The council debated implementation for hours. Eventually, a consensus emerged around a comprehensive response acknowledging biological inequality while committing to equity within constraints. Medical resource allocation. Enhanced, standard healthcare proportional to population. Baseline, priority access to preventive medicine, palliative care, pain management. Hybrid, specialized support for fertility challenges without expectation of cure. Governance adaptation. Formal recognition that enhanced longevity creates governance inequality. Commitment to rotate leadership despite enhanced capacity to continue. Baseline representation continuously renewed as individuals age. Enhanced experience valued but not allowed to dominate through persistence alone. Hybrid population support. Fertility support services for reproductive challenges. Acknowledgement hybrids prove biological incompatibility. Hybrid autonomy over mediation participation not forced bridge role. Ongoing biology research without expectation that hybrids can be fixed. Speciation monitoring. Quarterly tracking of genetic divergence. Long-term planning for reproductive isolation. Acceptance speciation is a biological reality, not a partnership failure. Preparation for eventual complete separation. The vote came after an exhaustive debate, 8-4 in favor. 4. Mixed enhanced/baseline recognizing compensation as realistic. Against, some enhanced see it as punishment for advantages, some baseline want impossible solutions. Nobody loved it. Everyone accepted it as the best achievable response to an unfixable biological hierarchy. Partnership adapting to reality it couldn't change, building equity within permanent inequality, working with genetics rather than against them. NC's home, evening. NC returned to the family gathering after the final council vote, carrying a resolution that acknowledged biological inequality while committing to equity within constraints. His wife, daughter, and granddaughter are all waiting to understand how the partnership would respond to the devastating revelation that baseline humans died at 60 while enhanced humans lived to nearly 200. What did they decide? Mari asked her daughter, wanting answers for her own children about mortality inequality. Medical resource priority for baseline populations, INSEE reported, sitting with family around the evening table. Governance structures ensuring baseline voices remain strong despite individuals dying, while enhanced individuals persist. Acknowledgement that biological inequality is permanent. Commitment to equity within constraints rather than pretending equality exists. So we still die at 60? Eliana, granddaughter who'd cried 2 days ago about mortality inequality, asked with the 9-year-old's direct questioning. Yes, INSEE confirmed, choosing honesty over comfort. Enhanced humans live an average of 180 years. We live an average of 60 years. That's biological reality. Sky Healer tried to change it. Failed. Biology determines outcomes institutions can't override. We die sooner. That's unfair. That's permanent. But partnership is trying to make it fair? Eliana pressed, searching for reassurance that adults were fixing the problem. Partnership is trying to make it equitable, INSEE clarified, testing the distinction he was still developing. Fair means equal, everyone has the same advantages. Equitable means compensating for inequalities we can't eliminate. Enhanced humans get biological advantages. We get medical care priority, governance structures that protect our voices, and recognition that our worth isn't measured by lifespan. Not equal. Not fair. But attempting to be equitable within biological constraints. Rana, INSEE's wife, spoke with the practical wisdom that 61 baseline years produced, so partnership accepts we're permanently disadvantaged but tries to help anyway? Partnership accepts biological hierarchy exists, INSEE said, and commits to preventing biological advantages from becoming political tyranny. Enhanced humans live longer, that's unfixable. Enhanced humans using longevity to dominate governance, that's preventable through institutional structures. Biology creates inequality. Partnership prevents inequality from becoming oppression. That's still not fair, Eliana observed. No, INSEE agreed, pulling his granddaughter close. It's not fair. Biology isn't fair. Enhanced humans got optimization. We got a standard function. They live 3 times longer. We die 3 times sooner. Fair would be everyone living the same length of time. Reality is that populations have different life expectancies. Partnership works with unfair reality rather than pretending reality is fair. Mari processed this, mother understanding she was teaching children to accept inequality while claiming worth despite disadvantage. How do we teach them dignity when life itself is unequal? By distinguishing worth from duration, INSEE replied, philosophical development happens through family conversation. Enhanced humans live 180 years. We live 60 years. That's the duration difference. Worth difference? No. Consciousness matters regardless of how long consciousness persists. 60 years of life have the same significance as 180 years of life. Different duration. Equal worth. That's dignity. Does the partnership accept that? Rana asked skeptically. Partnership is learning to accept that, INSEE corrected. Slowly. Imperfectly. But moving toward recognition that baseline populations matter not because we pretend to match enhanced longevity, but because we matter inherently. Worth not measured against enhanced standard but recognized on its own terms. He looked at the family gathered around the table, baseline humans aging visibly, approaching mortality, enhanced humans wouldn't face for another century, claiming dignity despite biological disadvantage they couldn't change. We live 60 years, INSEE said quietly, baseline dignity philosophy emerging through articulation. Enhanced humans live 180 years. We matter because we matter, not because we live longer. Partnership recognizing that truth, that's equity. Not equality. Not fairness, but equity within biological constraints that can't be changed. Eliana absorbed this with the 9-year-old's concrete understanding. So I matter even though I die young? You matter because you're a conscious being with inherent worth, Insi replied, trying to make philosophy comprehensible to a child facing the inequality of mortality. Lifespan doesn't determine significance. Duration doesn't determine value. You live 60 years, that's enough time to matter enormously. Enhanced children live 180 years. They don't matter 3 times more because they live 3 times longer. How do you know? Eliana asked, a child's question cutting to the philosophical core. Because worth isn't measured in years, Insi said, hoping his granddaughter would believe what he was learning to accept. It's measured in existing, in being conscious, in experiencing life. 60 years of experience matters as much as 180 years of experience. Different quantity, equal quality. That's baseline dignity. The family sat in evening light, baseline humans confronting mortality inequality through philosophical development that would need to sustain the entire population facing death while enhanced peers thrived for centuries. Baseline dignity, we matter because we matter. Not because we live as long. Not because we match their capabilities. Because consciousness has worth regardless of the biological container's duration. Insi would need to develop this philosophy more formally. Baseline populations needed an intellectual framework claiming worth despite disadvantage, dignity despite biological hierarchy, significance despite shorter lives. But the foundation was here, in family conversation about the granddaughter's mortality, in recognition that lifespan didn't determine worth, in commitment to claiming dignity despite the unfixedness biology imposed. Tomorrow, he'd work with Aga on formal philosophical development. Tonight, he held his granddaughter, facing a 60-year lifespan, and tried to believe that 60 years was enough. Thalia's laboratory, late night. Sophia found Thalia alone in the laboratory after the final council vote, surrounded by documentation of biological inequality that would persist for millennia regardless of institutional responses. It's done, Sophia said without preamble. Partnership acknowledging biological hierarchy. Committing to equity within constraints. Accepting what can't be changed. Is it enough? Thalia asked, the question carrying the weight of a creator confronting permanent consequences. Medical priority for baseline populations. Governance adaptation. Hybrid support. Speciation monitoring. None of it fixes the fundamental problem. Enhanced humans still live 3 times longer. Baseline humans still die young by comparison. Hybrids still experience fertility challenges, proving genetic incompatibility. It's not enough to solve the problem, Sophia agreed, sitting beside a friend who'd been carrying creator guilt for 6 years. It's enough to work on the problem. You can't extend baseline lifespans. Can improve baseline quality of life. Can't reverse enhancement. Can compensate through resource allocation. Can't cure hybrid fertility. Can support hybrids as they navigate challenges. That's acceptance, working within constraints rather than fighting constraints. Thalia absorbed this, recognition dawning that redemption wasn't fixing the past but building a better future within the past consequences. What's Saduri's response? Thalia asked, connecting the population crisis to personal relationships. Relief, Sophia said. Her fertility challenges are acknowledged as a genetic reality rather than a personal failure. Partnership recognizing hybrids aren't broken, they're experiencing consequences of incompatibility between populations we're trying to unite. She feels seen and not fixed. Seen. That's significant. Not fixed, Thalia repeated, testing the word's implications. Can't fix her fertility. Can support her as she decides whether to pursue parenthood despite challenges or choose a different life path. That's autonomy. Not a solution. Autonomy. What about you? Sophia pressed. You spent 2 years trying to fix biological inequality, 47 experimental failures. Now accepting you can't fix what you made. That's transformation for someone who's been a healer for 55,000 years. I can't undo enhancement, Thalia said, words feeling like confession and acceptance simultaneously. Can't reverse speciation. Can't extend baseline lives. Can't cure hybrid fertility. Can't fix what I made. That's a limit I've never faced before, permanent consequence I can't heal despite medical expertise spanning civilizations. She looked at displays showing biological hierarchy quantified across every health metric. Redemption isn't fixing the past. Is building a better future within the past's constraints. Can't give baseline humans enhanced lifespans. Can dedicate remaining immortal existence to maximizing baseline quality of life within lifespans, as biology has established. That's acceptance. That's the limit. That's a realistic path forward. From desperate savior to humble supporter, Sophia observed, recognizing a shift in a friend's approach. From creator trying to undo creation to healer working within creation's consequences, Thalia corrected. Made enhanced humans. Can't unmake them. Made baseline humans appear deficient by comparison. Can't undo comparison. Created a speciation crisis. Can't reverse divergence. But can help baseline populations live as well as possible within the biological reality my intervention created. Sophia heard transformation complete from guilt-driven fixing to acceptance-based support, from trying to eliminate hierarchy to working within hierarchy toward equity, from desperate experiments to compassionate care within constraints. Baseline healthcare initiative starting immediately? Sophia asked, shifting to practical implementation. Tomorrow, Thalia confirmed. Medical facilities across partnership territories are redirecting resources toward baseline priority care, pain management, palliative services, preventive medicine, maternal health, elder care. Everything focused on maximizing baseline quality of life over a 60-year lifespan. Can extend duration. Can improve experience. In hybrid fertility support, specialized services without expectation of cure, Thalia said. Hybrids facing reproductive challenges receive medical support, counseling, and autonomy over parenthood decisions. But clear acknowledgement that fertility challenges aren't a disease, they're a genetic reality from incompatible configurations. Support, not false hope. Honesty, not performance of fixing. That's a significant change from 2 years ago, Sophia noted. 2 years ago, I thought everything was fixable, Thalia replied. Thought medical expertise could solve any biological problem. 47 failures taught me that some problems are permanent. Some consequences are unfixable. Some hierarchies are embedded in genetics itself. That's humility. That's acceptance. That's a realistic foundation for work that actually helps rather than promises impossible solutions. They sat in the laboratory's quiet, two immortal women who both created children, Sophia literally, Thalia metaphorically through enhancement, and watched creations prove problems couldn't be solved biologically, only accommodated institutionally. I can't undo enhancement, Thalia said quietly, final acceptance settling into place. Can't reverse what I made. Can't fix consequences spanning generations. But can dedicate the next 1,000 years, 10,000 years, however long the partnership lasts, to helping baseline humans live as well as possible within the constraints my creation imposed. That's redemption. Not fixing the past. Building a better future despite the past. That's accepting limits, Sophia said. That's accepting reality, Thalia corrected. Enhanced humans live 187 years. Baseline humans live 59 years. Hybrids live 118 years, with a 27% reduction in fertility. Those are permanent genetic realities. Partnership works within those realities rather than pretending they don't exist. That's honest. That's sustainable. That's the foundation for equity even without equality. Sophia stood to leave, recognizing that a friend had found a path from guilt to practical action. Tomorrow starts the Baseline Healthcare Initiative? Tomorrow starts, Thalia confirmed. And continues for however long I exist. Can't fix what I made. It can help with what I made. That's enough. Has to be enough. It's enough. After Sophia departed, Thalia remained in the laboratory, surrounded by documentation of the biological hierarchy that would persist for millennia. Enhanced humans live 3 times longer than baseline humans. Hybrids proved populations were biologically incompatible. Speciation is accelerating toward reproductive isolation within 8 centuries. All permanent. All unfixable. All requiring acceptance rather than desperate denial. She saved the final analysis, a comprehensive assessment of biological inequality that the partnership would work within for generations to come, enhanced advantages embedded in genetics. Baseline mortality is unchanged. Hybrid fertility challenges are already proving to be advanced. Reality partnership had to accommodate rather than solve. Tomorrow she'd begin the Baseline Healthcare Initiative, decades of work maximizing quality of life for populations facing mortality inequality and not fixing the problem and working within the problem and accepting what couldn't be changed while improving what could be improved. That was redemption for the creator who couldn't undo creation. Acceptance for a healer who couldn't heal the fundamental hierarchy. Commitment to immortal working within biological constraints, mortality imposed on populations she divided through intervention meant to help. Enhanced, 187 years. Baseline, 59 years. Hybrids, 118 years, 27% fertility reduction. Numbers that wouldn't change. Reality that required acceptance. A hierarchy that demanded equity even without equality. Thalia left the laboratory knowing tomorrow began work that would continue for centuries, helping baseline humans live as well as possible within lifespans biology gave them, supporting hybrids navigating fertility challenges, genetic incompatibility produced, accepting that enhancement had created an unfixable hierarchy requiring permanent compensation rather than a temporary solution. After 55,000 years, she'd finally learned, some problems can't be fixed. Some consequences are permanent. Some hierarchies are embedded in biology itself. Acceptance wasn't defeat. It was a foundation for realistic work within constraints that couldn't be changed. Biology didn't negotiate with ethics. Partnership learned to negotiate with biology instead. And in that negotiation, accepting unfixable inequality while building equity within constraints, a partnership found a foundation that might survive generations of mortality cycling through while longevity persisted. Tomorrow, the work begins. The fertility data reveal the partnership's ultimate challenge, surviving 400 years until biology solves what politics can barely manage. 8 generations of conscious choice are required. 25 baseline generations. 12 hybrid generations. Each questioning inherited frameworks. Each discovers efficiencies appeal independently. Each choosing partnership, despite biology making hierarchy easier. Thalia saved humanity from extinction. Also created inequality requiring endless vigilance. Both true. Both permanent. Both her responsibilities are regardless of intentions. But 400 years seems manageable compared to the immediate crisis approaching. In Chapter 11, the resource crisis begins, copper production collapses. Enhanced cognition sees it 12 years early. Strategic stockpiling begins. Economic inequality emerges despite political equality, a partnership tested by scarcity. Join us next time. This is the story of how temporary advantages create permanent challenges. And how biology's timeline doesn't wait for politics to catch up. Let's begin.